The longer the Hollywood strike goes on, the spicier things seem to be getting. Yes, the actors and the writers are not working, and the studios, well, their books are starting to be opened up. Not only from their investing partners who are now looking for every dollar and dime they can find, but also by some governments. And they're discovering that perhaps those movie numbers are not so accurate. Now, companies like Disney may be facing lawsuits and even more. All right, folks, welcome back to another video here on the WDW Pro channel. A joy to have each and every one of you, and a joy to have Mexican Iron Man. That's right, Mike is back. Mike, it has been far, far too long, and so I'm exceedingly happy that you are joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me back. I've been on vacation for 2 weeks and still not a YouTuber, but happy to join you today, sir.
And for those of you who don't know out there, Mike is part of the magic that makes so many channels out there go. So when you're watching some of your favorite content creators, there's a very good chance that Mike is somewhere behind the scenes helping out and doing all the things that make us have a chance at success. So kudos to Mike, and Mike will hop right in, I suppose, and let you do your magic once more. Here's what we've got. Dade Hayes reporting for Deadline. Disney sued by film finance partner TSG, which claims media giant used every trick in the Hollywood accounting book to hoard slate profits. I know, Mike, that you are as shocked as I am that the Walt Disney Company has perhaps been not fully forward and putting their actual numbers in the light. I know that's just shocking, isn't it?
I thought for sure by the time I'd come back if I was gone for 2 weeks, I thought for sure by the time I get back, Bob would have it all together.
That's right. The mouse messiah was going to come back and straighten it all out. Turns out those accountants and those actuaries did not apparently get the message.
Nope.
Disney has been hit with a lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court by film financier TSG, which claims that the media giant used nearly every trick in the Hollywood accounting book to hoard hundreds of millions in profit. Hundreds of millions! Echoing the ScarJo suit over the release of Black Widow across both movie theaters and Disney Plus in 2021, TSG contends that Disney made a number of movies aimed at feathering its own streaming nest. Interesting verbiage. Warner Media faced similar legal blowback from longtime co-finance partner Village Roadshow over the day and date streaming release of The Matrix Resurrections and other films. TSG spent $3.3 billion to help back some 140 projects at Fox, which joined the Disney fold as part of the $71.3 billion acquisition of most of 21st Century Fox in 2019. TSG's credits include The Banshees of Inisherin. Is that how I say that, Mike? We'll go with it.
Yeah, go with it.
Avatar: The Way of Water, Bohemian Rhapsody, Deadpool, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and The Shape of Water. Now, Michael, let me throw a little theory out at you, and you tell me what you think about it. What I'm coming up with on here is that TSG was in cahoots with Fox, and they had a pretty good idea of the kind of money they were expecting to invest and the kind of money they were expecting to see on the return of their investment. Then Disney buys Fox, and suddenly those numbers shift significantly. I'm betting that put them in a very keen place to understand, hey, now wait a minute, this should not be, and I'm betting that Disney uses this same sort of scheme with all of their movies, but it took someone who had been working closely with a studio acquired by Disney to make the realization of what's happening here. What say you as to that thesis?
You're 100% on point, and in particular, I went ahead and while we were getting started, pulled the actual lawsuit. And for those who don't know who TSG is, TSG helped finance more than 140 Fox films since they began the relationship, TSG and Fox. Now, this lawsuit stems from a revenue participation agreement, an RPA is what they're called in the industry, that was originally executed back on December 31st of 2012. There were multiple amendments to this, and those are cited in the lawsuit that people can read for themselves. Deadline grabbed a copy of it and has a link in this article that you're citing. But basically what happens is that TSG is financing this. In fact, in terms of how big is, TSG, which I'm sure most people, haven't heard of it, but this company has financed in excess of $3 billion. Actually, I think it's $3.3 billion worth of financing. And over 140 different films are at issue in this RPA. Now, what happened what sparked this, and this happens from the accounting industry, usually when you hear that so-and-so isn't happy, in this case, it's a financier, that usually comes up years after the fact. And what happened is that post-Disney acquisition of Fox, and we're now past COVID, we're here sitting here in 2023. So obviously this is more than a 10-year relationship. They had an independent audit firm go in and look at Fox's books and records to determine if the RPA, the tenets of that agreement, were being maintained with the integrity of the terms of that agreement. And in particular, what they wanted to do is look at what's called DGR. DGR is defined gross receipts as one of the terms of the RPA. I know I'm throwing a lot of letters out, but just basically they sent in some auditors to take a look at the books. They sampled 3 films of 140, and you might ask, well, why didn't they do all 140? Well, first of all, it takes too long, and in the accounting and audit world, audit sampling is what's done. And the theory goes in the accounting world is that if we take a sample, in this case at least 3, of the pool of the available data or projects, what are we going to uncover? Obviously, if they uncover nothing, then there's no malfeasance. There's nothing to talk about, and surely there's no lawsuit. You know, you find some irregularities in one of the 3 of your samples. Well, okay, maybe, you know, there was some, you know, you could argue that maybe 1 or 2 of the sample of 3, there were some oddities about, maybe some errors. But when you sample 3, in this case, 3 of the 140, and all of them have problems, and in the case of their lawsuit, I'm going to quote this, quote, the auditors discovered that Fox failed to credit TSG with revenue that Fox's own business record showed should have been included in the defined gross receipts definition. Additionally, TSG was charged millions of dollars of distribution fees that the RP shouldn't have permitted. In fact, Fox deducted from TSG's gross receipts additional tens of millions of dollars for, quote, distribution expenses that had nothing to do with the distribution of the qualifying pictures. Essentially, self-dealing. So what they're basically saying is that the way the Fox books and records were maintained when this audit that took place is that there's all kinds of self-dealing. And what self-dealing is basically a practice where a studio enters in a kind of deals with license affiliates to artificially minimize profit payments to financiers and investors, yet they still sort of claim the revenues. And essentially, it's like taking money from one pocket and putting it in the other. But you're creating an invoice, and by basically saying that with the paper trail that there's less profit, then you don't have to pay out to the investors or the financiers all the money that they'd otherwise do. So that's it might be boring accounting talk, but that's what's happening here.
I don't think it's boring at all. I think we're having a good time.
Okay? Is that what you're looking for?
No, I think this is great. I mean, the folks out there are getting a free course in corporate accounting, and there's no tuition, and the professor's fantastic. So
I was first exposed to this when I had an office in Santa Monica in West LA, West Hollywood. I was out in Santa Monica, and we were at ground zero of Hollywood. And in my office, we did restaurant bars, but we also did post-production accounting for motion picture releases, independents, and some that were financed by studios. We did it for a number of years. I no longer have this office. I closed it down many years ago. I decided to get out of that market, but that's where I was first exposed to this. And when I found it, I remember seeing it the first time I saw this type of thing happening. And it's not what I'm used to as a classically trained manufacturing and service corporate accountant. That's, my background comes from ExxonMobil and service industry. And so I found it weird, but it's not that it's illegal, but I think that the problem here is that it's not always something that's illegal. It's not something that you go to prison for, type of thing, in terms of violating your agreements, but it is something that you can sue for, because in this case, TSG feels that Disney, Fox, violated the ethical intent and the terms of this agreement.
So 2 points here, Mike, that I think are important, and I want to get your take on both. Point number 1, I think that we're going to see more of this sort of thing as the Hollywood strike continues, because the free flow of cash is coming to a close. Right. So you're going to be tremendous pressure on some of these companies to try to find every dollar and dime they can. Point number 2, I think this is significant for the Walt Disney Company because, and here's what I really need your opinion on. I'm thinking this is not probably just relegated to Fox. I wonder if this is something systemic throughout the Walt Disney Company itself, and perhaps when Fox was acquired, Fox brought on this new form of manipulating the numbers, as you've laid out for us. I'm wondering if some of these other investors now are looking at what's being brought forth into the light and saying to themselves, I wonder about these other Disney projects that I've been a part of and the money that we've put forth. Maybe it's time for us to do an audit. Do you think this opens Disney up to significant scrutiny from other investors?
Well, excuse me for coughing. Interesting that you asked that question, because in the actual legal document that was filed, I believe it's term number 10. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I'm going to quote this for you. Quote, "The audit findings barely scratch the surface of the myriad ways Fox breached its agreement with TSG and lined its own pockets at TSG's expense. One such example relates to the distribution of qualifying pictures in what is known as a pay-one window." Now, I'm not going to go through that, but it's interesting that you asked that, bro, because in the actual legal filing, they're basically saying that there's much more of this that they're going to find as they dig deeper. Now, if I were a financier that wasn't TSG, and I just read this announcement that this is happening, I'm absolutely going to say, hey, guys, maybe we need to call in some auditors for our agreement and let's have our books and records analyzed. Since Hollywood has stopped making new stuff and new money's not flowing anymore, let's make sure we got paid out on every deal that we had in the past. Number one. Number two is, unless I'm mistaken, while I was on vacation, I could have sworn I just heard Bob Iger.
Thank you, Bob.
Basically boasting about how well Avatar at Fox did.
Yeah, that was one of the only successes they had, eh?
Well, it sounds like Disney has plenty of money, and if other companies want to do audits that were financiers, I would certainly encourage them to if I did their tax returns on an annual basis. I'd say, you know what? Why don't we go back and take a look that we made sure that we got paid out on everything, that no one, and that Disney or Fox or one of its other corporate affiliates underneath the Mouse House umbrella didn't accidentally or deliberately forget to pay people what they were due.
So, Mike, this suit is, I believe, hundreds of millions of dollars. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, folks out there.
But I fully expect that this thing won't go to trial. But if I were here's what I would do. I don't know if this is what's going to happen, but usually when I've seen situations like this, I would do the lawsuit drops, and I would say that I want to go into a due diligence phase where they're going to pull even more records, and then they'll probably go into settlement negotiations.
Right, I fully expect settlement.
Yeah, I could not imagine, Pro, that Disney will allow this thing to go to court and have full discovery and those entered into as a matter of public record, which then could,
especially, Mike, if that turns out to be a systemic policy on the part of the Walt Disney Company,
right,
that's resulted in this, that would be horrific.
Right, because then
domino effect.
Right, exactly. And what you're touching on is then there's potential SEC effects, because then you have a public disclosure of potential malfeasance, and then that, of course, could lead to much worse impacts, such as stock price and other things.
So we don't know what the settlement might be if they arrive at a settlement point, but I don't suspect that this will have a major impact on their purchase of Hulu, because I think that Disney will defer in every way possible this situation until after the Hulu acquisition happens. So I know many out there are probably thinking, oh my gosh, it's harder for Disney to buy Hulu even more. That's a very observant thought, but I think Disney will push this off as far as they can. Now, one thing that I do want to bring up to you, Mike, that is just, this is odd that this is coming out within the same 24-hour period. This is just strange to me. And I don't know if there's a connection here or not, but Nancy Tartaglione out of Deadline has this. South Korea police allege box office manipulation on 320 plus local films. Exhibition distribution officials referred to prosecutor. I'll give you just the gist of this. It says, police in South Korea said today that 69 officials from theater chains, including CGV, Lot, and Megabox, and from 24 film distributors have been referred without detention to the prosecutor on charges of obstruction of business, local media reports. This follows an investigation that began in June into suspicious box office numbers. Police claim the accused were involved in fabricating figures to boost film rankings over the past 5 years. Now, right now, as far as we can tell in this investigation, it's limited to just local films in the South Korean market. But that's not to say that this couldn't get bigger. And I'm kind of wondering now if maybe some of our domestic studios could get pulled into this as part of this investigation as it continues on. I just think there's a lot of shenanigans going on with the box office lately. I kind of wonder what your take is here. Do you think that the numbers internationally, perhaps even, are just largely kind of fabricated at this point? And are we on the cusp of maybe some governments getting involved in, what would you say, discovering out what it is these studios have been up to for the past decade or so?
Wow, this is news to me. I don't know, but this is not good. This has all kinds of impacts. I mean, I don't know if when they say local movies, does that mean anything that's exhibited locally? Because if that's the case, then that means international releases that are sold by distributors. Because the way international releases work is they use international distributors, and so this Korea case could mean all of a variety of major releases. And Korea is a really important market. Most people don't think that, but Korea is really a good bellwether market for how a lot of things play out internationally, for myriad of reasons that I won't go into. But wow, this is really fascinating to me that this news broke. And I think here's what I find very interesting. I think what this does is it lends credibility to your thesis from a few minutes ago, where you were basically saying that with Hollywood being at a standstill and the cash flow sort of stopping, right? Hollywood's frozen, right? No writers, no actors, cash flow frozen, new budgets for new projects. That means people aren't getting advances on pre-production work. Writers aren't getting their scripts bought. Everything stopped.
And Mike, also, you've got some of these companies, of course, their fiscal years are going to begin. They've got to put out their budgets for these fiscal years, and there's so much uncertainty. They don't know what to put out for their ledgers.
So what this does is this follows a similar trend that people need to be, people, whether they're the authorities, whether it's government, whether it's financiers, Hollywood, obviously, and the motion picture industry, whether it's based out of Hollywood or not, is under the microscope, and accountability is going to be at the forefront of what's happening before we get back to normal. So I think this is in line with your thesis that with the cash flow being stopped, people are going to be asking questions whether those people are financiers or government authorities, domestic and internationally.
I think things are going to get very spicy the longer this strike goes on.
Yeah, I agree.
Of course, the writers, the actors, they're going to start running out of money. I don't think that the highest paid actors and writers are going to help out the lowest paid ones very much. They're not going to offer them that extra spare bedroom or the 17 spare bedrooms they have.
No.
But, in terms of the South Korean thing, we're talking about 323 movies that were overcounted, it seems purposefully, 2.7 million additional customers beyond what really happened. And apparently this was done through some system of ghost screenings, where there were supposed screenings that occurred in the middle of the night that didn't actually take place, and those theaters were closed. They clearly didn't have people in them. Yeah. So I think it's all fascinating. I think this may be starting to open up the books, and whenever you're dealing with a government prosecution, you never know who might be ensnared, maybe some of our domestic studios as well. But Mike, we'll keep watching all of this. It's very interesting. But again, welcome back. We're so happy that you had a fantastic vacation. But at the same time, we have missed you big time, and I know the audience out there is so pleased that you're back at it again. So rabbit chicken tacos for everybody. Woo-hoo! Mike, where can people find you?
Midnight Sedge After Dark, Midnight Sedge, and anywhere else I'm invited usually. Thanks for having me, bro. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're always invited here. Folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and that little notification bell. Click it, stick it to the algorithms. Drop a comment down below. We cover your comments. We care about what you think. Tell us what's on your mind. Do you think this is the beginning of a much broader, perhaps, investigation into what the studios are up to? And do you think that Disney has been caught red-handed? Was the mouse going after a little bit too much cheese? Folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Make sure to catch The Pro Show Thursdays 5 to 7 Eastern Time. Entertainment Explained, The Culture Curve Conquered, live with Pro and all his friends.